Presented by GhostBed.com.
Yeah, welcome to Drinkin, Bros. Kids, it's a beautiful Tuesday afternoon in the neighborhood. D'Anthony, it's even better. We got a couple badasses who just show up and say, hey, dude, I'm ready to talk some shit.
Yeah, we didn't even invite them. They just showed up and demanded.
They just walked through the door, and they were like, hey, let us on the fucking show.
Yeah.
We've got shit to say, too. And I was like, all right, great. Who's going to stop them? Who do we got here today, D'Anthony?
Well, we've got the former SEAC, John Wayne Troxell, and we have Tim Bachas. I believe you were at JTAC, right?
I was.
Yeah, so got a couple of fucking hard chargers here that have probably, got to be close to 60 years of combined military experience, maybe a little bit more than that, right?
25 here.
20, so yeah,
Wow.
63 years.
So
Yeah.
let me start with you first. Is it true that Jared Taylor is the best JTAC of all time?
He's pretty good. Like, and it's really like his passion carries over into everything that he puts out there.
Yeah.
So whether it's Article 15, whether it's Black Rifle, it's whatever. He goes balls deep and he puts all the passion in everything that he can.
Have you known him for a long time?
Since he got to Fort Bragg, our career, we were never stationed together, but we just kept crisscrossing here and there, and now I work directly for him.
That's amazing. Yeah, because you guys have the Black Rifle coffee hats on. Do both of you work at Black Rifle?
No, I just came down for the visit. I did, the Free Range American podcast.
Yeah.
And yesterday we went to the formal training unit on Camp Bullis and spoke to a bunch of hard charging future JTACs, and then came up here today. One of my sponsors, It's Skinny Pasta, has a headquarters here, so.
We're 103 seconds into this show, and you're already dropping
sponsors like a pro, dude.
And only 9 calories, tastes great, and will fill you up. And you cannot outtrain a bad diet if you're in the warrior class. So get off the burgers, fries, and apple pies and get you some skinny pasta.
Look at that, dude. That's a Ross Patterson read right there. I'm proud of you. I'm proud of you for that one. I like that read. But let's get into you guys killing people.
Well,
okay?
let's start with who you are. Tell our audience what a SEAC is, because I don't think many people know, to be honest.
So the SEAC is the Senior Enlisted Advisor to the Chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff, the senior enlisted person in the United States military. You have a Secretary of Defense, you have a chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff that heads up, the service chiefs. And for years, up until 2005, there was never an enlisted position there. And General Pete Pace, Marine, created the position, and I was the third guy to hold the job. And now CZ Colon Lopez, an Air Force pararescue jumper, is the current SEAC.
It's interesting to me. I want to bring this up out of the gate because particularly in the Army, I don't know about the other forces, but in the Army, the sergeant major of the Army is typically some fucking pogue, right? Almost always. Not to discredit their whatever the fuck they did or whatever it was, but it's almost always a guy that wasn't in the infantry. It wasn't a hard charger. It wasn't a combat guy at all. And it's interesting to see that the SEAC position, at least the last two, are you and this guy were fucking people that were in operational units, right?
Yeah, well, so the Secretary of Defense and the chairman, on behalf of the president, create the National Defense and National Military Strategy. So as the senior enlisted guy, your role as the SEAC is not to focus on haircuts and cigarette butts or heads and beds. You have to get out to the force, gain the pulse of the force, and report that back to the chairman and the SecDef so that our strategies are understood and executed at the tactical level in such garden spots as Syria, Iraq, Afghanistan, Somalia, Libya, in places like that.
Right.
So
it's almost like the sergeant major of the Army is like a first sergeant. You're like more of a master sergeant, like you're actually doing shit. You think? I mean, not that he's not doing things. I just mean,
he's
for him
focused
it's beans
on,
and bullets, right?
Yeah, he's focused on policy.
Right.
So he focuses on, hey, you can wear black socks and PT uniform, or you can wear headphones in the gym, or trying to assist the Chief of Staff of the Army with policy. Because, as you know, the role of the services is to provide trained and ready forces to the Secretary of Defense for employment into the combatant command.
To prosecute warfare, though, right?
Absolutely.
So why would the number one senior enlisted person in any of the branches of the military not be somebody with experience in warfare?
Well, some of them have experience in warfare, but I think you get into that job and you get focused on manning, equipping, and training.
Well, you have to, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
I mean, shit.
But you can never forget what the role of that service is, and it's to fight and win our nation's wars.
Right.
And, too many times today, we don't hear that enough about fighting and winning.
Well, then what we hear about today is people's feelings.
Yeah.
And let's get into that because you've had some experience with hurting people's feelings over time. Let's take it all the way, before we get into that, let's take it all the way back. So you started out as a paratrooper in what, 3rd Brigade, 82nd?
I was in the Armored Reconnaissance Battalion, and I was attached to 1st Brigade, 82nd.
1st Brigade. So you deployed to you jumped into Panama then.
Jumped into Panama.
So you've got a little mustard stain on your shirt there.
Was Panama for the Noriega conflict?
Yes.
Were you there for all that?
Absolutely.
How was it as crazy as it seemed on the news and all that stuff? Like,
so we were a peacetime military at that time.
Yeah.
And
other than Grenada, there hadn't been like a major actually you guys were somebody was on the way to Grenada and they called them back, right? Like an airborne unit, but then they did something else.
Well, they didn't jump in Grenada, the 82nd. They air landed.
Okay, I see. Yeah.
Yeah.
But that was 83, and then
was
the next one was
83.
89. And it's these big gaps in, like right now, we're getting back to that point where you walk around a military base and most of the dudes on E5 or under don't have combat patches. And
70% of the force.
That's weird as shit to me.
Yep.
Yeah.
First of all, but back then that was the norm, right? So you guys went to Panama and tell that story.
Yeah. So being an 82nd guy, you go on DRF1 all the darn time,
Yeah.
And I will, now that I'm retired, I'll say this: some of my best drunks were when I was on a 1-hour recall.
Yeah, absolutely.
And, so
because you got to get it in.
Yeah, absolutely.
You know
So we knew things were happening in Panama. A lieutenant had been killed. Another officer and his family had been assaulted down there. And
Right.
we knew things were escalating, but we didn't think it would be, a combat deployment. And on the morning of the 19th of December, I said goodbye to my wife, start a half-day schedule. I'll be home at noon. We can go Christmas shopping or whatever. Never made it home. I got in. We got alerted. We marshaled over at the personnel holding area, issued ammunition, grenades, everything. Drop altitude was 500 feet.
That's how it is.
Yeah.
So, by the way, when you jump, when you do a
very low to the ground.
Yeah.
When you do a combat jump, it's somewhere between 500 and 800. If you're
Yeah.
expecting any kind of fire, it's going to be 500, which means you don't even have time to pull your reserve. If your
Yeah.
main chute doesn't open,
That's
you're
it.
fucked. Yeah.
You hit the ground. When you did hit the ground, was it like on TV? Because I was a kid and I remember seeing it was wall-to-wall footage, right?
Yeah.
Where, they had, what was it, Metallica playing or Guns N' Roses or something?
Well, that was later
That
on.
was at the
blast.
That was
right,
at the
yeah.
Papal Nuncio,
Yeah.
and I was there for that. But initially, when we jumped in, if you in Panama City, you have a military airfield, and just adjacent to it, you have the international airport. So 1st and 2nd Ranger Battalion jumped on the military airfield to take down targets there. My unit, the 1st Brigade of the 82nd, we jumped on the international airport and secured assault objectives there and neutralized the Panamanian Defense Forces that were there.
After World War II, that became the primary focus of the 82nd Airborne, is to seize airfields, basically.
Yeah.
Like if we were going to war with a country, we're going to take the Rangers in 82nd are going to take all the airfields in that country before anybody has a chance to do shit. Blow up
Yeah.
airplanes and do whatever the fuck, right?
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
Just
well,
to give context to people.
Yeah, absolutely. Because Panama didn't last that long.
No, it was one of those romantic combat tours. You're gone long enough to go home and, hey, honey, let's have another kid, or,
I mean, you got a
21
CIB
days.
and a mustard stain. That's long enough, right?
Yeah,
Shit.
absolutely. Well, because of how big Panama City was, and because I was the most casualty producing weapon in an armored reconnaissance vehicle with a 152 main gun on it, along with a 50 cal. And
So you're an 11 Mike, is that what that is?
I was a 19 Delta.
Oh, now you were a Cav guy.
Yeah, I was
Okay,
a recon
I see.
guy. And so I was a target that, the PDF or the Dignity battalions, Noriega's little bodyguards, would always look to try to ambush, But, don't bring an AK-47 to a fight against a weapon that's got a 152
millimeter shot.
or a
Get the
50
fuck
cal,
outta here, yeah.
So right before Christmas, we kind of tamped down the resistance, and we occupied, because Noriega holed up in the Papal Nuncio, a religious
Oh, yeah,
thing.
yeah.
And so we kind of isolated it, and And that's when the nowhere to run to, nowhere to hide, Metallica.
Yeah.
And
I mean, to be fair to Noriega, he was probably a little confused at why just a few years earlier we assassinated General Torreo and then put him into power and let him fucking run drug operations so we could use the money to buy guns for other countries.
Yeah.
And then we all of a sudden got mad at him for it. He was probably a little confused about that.
Well,
right?
if you look at Noriega's resume, he did a lot of schooling in the United States at
In-
our School
in
of
Florida,
the
right?
Americas.
Yeah.
Our
well,
Ranger
they
School.
didn't move to Benning after the School of the Americas moved up to Benning at some point. didn't
Yeah,
Or
they
is it there
did.
now, maybe.
It's at Benning
It started
now.
at Gulick in Panama.
That's right.
My dad was there in the 70s.
Yeah.
And then, what was that, 20th Infantry or some shit like
Yeah,
that down
yeah,
there?
yeah.
Yeah.
And Noriega attended our war college
Yep.
and stuff. So
It's crazy.
we trained the guy. you know.
Well, we do that.
But I don't know if being a drug runner or being a guy that was killing innocent civilians was on the curriculum at the war college.
No,
but that's
for
what he
certainly
ended
not,
up
no.
to be. You know?
Yeah. He was certainly a turd, but he was a financed
Yeah.
by U.S.
Yeah.
dollars turd.
He
But
was
anyways,
built here.
yeah. Anyways, yeah, that was that. I wonder about that Metallica thing. Is that a good thing for them or an insult to them?
Well, I wouldn't. That probably wasn't on Noriega's hit
Playlist,
list.
yeah,
Then,
yeah.
a playlist.
Yeah.
And the music was loud. The speakers were humongous. And
That's really funny.
Were you guys laughing during this? Because
Yes.
it's
he was a paratrooper. They were laughing at everything.
because I mean, look, having a lot of friends in the military now, when you see it on TV, they paint it as this tense picture and everybody's on edge and ready to go.
well, it was that way for the first 5 or 6 days. But once we started neutralizing the threats and seizing critical terrain and then gaining the appreciation of the population, things kind of died down. And then when Noriega holed up in the Papal Nuncio, all of his cronies decided to say, hey, you done got the last click out of Junior.
Yeah.
And they were giving up.
We're not
going to
be in this building when it gets leveled.
Exactly.
Basically.
Yeah.
Fuck
Yeah.
that.
That's wild.
Yeah.
And so when did it end?
The 12th of January is when we redeployed back to Fort Bragg.
Okay.
But there were forces that were already there, at Fort Sherman and places like that down there where, your dad served at. So they continued with the stabilization and then the re-energizing of the economy, the government, and everything like that. But the enemy was completely decimated, and all of a sudden they were like, hey, it's time to change teams here, So
Yeah, and when you go back to Fort Bragg, you've got to be looking at it like, man, that was kind of fun.
Yeah,
that was a blast for a little bit. Maybe they'll all be like that.
My vehicle, which has 14.5 bullet holes in the front of the hull, is at the museum of the 82nd Airborne Division.
Is it really?
Yeah.
I've definitely seen
So
that.
it shows you how much of an old bastard I am, The shit I rode on is in a freaking museum now.
Yeah, that's good. But here's something.
Yeah.
Look, obviously the 82nd is an elite unit, so take this for what it's worth. But the fact that without any combat experience, people were able to go in and execute that plan to perfection, I would say. So obviously it's microcosms of things go wrong here and there, but the plan itself was executed perfectly. The airfields were taken, and then you seized all the critical territory in such a way that showed people you weren't there to fuck them up. That this is classic. This is
Right.
one of the most textbook military operations in modern history, but you did it without any experience at all. And I wonder about the people now and what they're going to look like when they go into one of these situations with no experience, because the attitudes have shifted quite a bit.
Yeah.
Right, about what the purpose of the U.S. military is.
Yeah.
Obviously.
So when I retired, I thought my days of being in front of troops were going to be over. But I travel as much now as a retired SEAC that I did when I was the SEAC. In the last 9 months, I've been to 7 of our Army divisions. I've been to 9 different air bases, a couple of Marine bases and stuff. And as I mentioned, Chachi and I yesterday were over talking to a bunch of airmen over there. And my message is always, hey, the vast majority of our tactical level force now is not combat experience. Meaning, they might have deployed somewhere, but they weren't fighting the hard fighting that we were accustomed to in the
Right.
2000s
Right.
and the early 2000 teens. They do a lot of security force assistance stuff. That may not necessarily be a bad thing if our training mimics the chaos, the brutality and unforgiveness of combat.
Correct. And here's an analogy or a metaphor, whatever you call it, I'll use for this.
Yeah.
All these non-experienced combat people in the early 2000s during the invasion, they were still using equipment and tactics from Vietnam. It was fucking stupid, right? We had no idea what the fuck we were doing, except for some guys at the top. And luckily, we had the ability to funnel them down with organizations like asymmetrical warfare, and et cetera, right?
Yeah,
so,
JIATO and those.
Yeah, of course. So we were able to do some of that, but not at the beginning.
Right.
And still, it's people who have been in the military have certainly heard the phrase violence of action. And it's actually kind of a bastardization or a reductive version of the idea that a decent plan executed now is better than a perfect plan executed later.
Yeah.
Right? It's essentially that idea, and we're just not there anymore. Clearly,
Right.
we are not prepared to deal. I mean, these kids aren't prepared to deal with life.
Yeah.
In general, much less fucking combat. And I wonder who it is that's going to fight this next war, because there's one coming. There's always a war coming.
Well, I think you're on it. You know, the character of conflict is going to continue to change. And right now, the emerging domains like cyber, nuclear's already been there, but it's been re-energized now.
Space.
And space,
Yeah.
absolutely.
Yep.
But that still means we have to have requisite number of ground, air, and maritime forces that can fight and win.
You can't snatch a nuclear weapon out of the sky, right? But I can go kill the guy that's holding it.
Yes.
At some point, it comes down to a man with a gun versus another man with a gun.
Absolutely.
At the end of every single fucking
That's
war.
the true nature of conflict.
That's
and that
it,
will never
right?
change.
So
Yeah.
how do you get that back into a culture in the military that is where one, there's too many political people are getting involved in the first place,
Yep.
and that's always been the case, but it's way worse now. But let's fast forward a little bit to your time as an NCO leader, like a senior NCO leader, and some of the comments you made about prosecuting warfare and how they were taken.
Well,
Because you're wearing a shirt to that effect now.
yeah. So, you know, when we were at the height of the surge in Iraq, you know, I was Surge Brigade number 4. I was the brigade command sergeant major of 4th Stryker Brigade 2ID.
What year was that?
That was 07, 08.
Okay, yeah, that's when Jared and I were there at Taji, and then at
You were with 2nd Brigade.
Right, yeah.
And you were Surge Brigade number 2. Yeah. So, and your battle space was contiguous to mine. You were in northern Baghdad,
Right.
and I was in southern
okay.
the province there, Salah ad-Din
Yeah, yeah.
province. And back then it was easy because guys like you had 2 or 3 hard fighting combat tours under their belt. And so the actual, you know, engagements of fighting against a numerically superior force, learning how to adapt to that and winning,
Right.
you had done it through sets and repetitions.
Right. Or the ones of us that hadn't certainly had the bulk of our unit were
Yeah.
guys that had, I would say 70% of the unit at that point were combat patched
Absolutely.
CIB guys, for
You
sure.
know, in my brigade alone, I lost 54 great men, and I had over 500 severely wounded. And in the
Was
first,
Omar Avias, what was that, 126, were they in your group? Because they were south of us a little bit. But.
no, that was 3rd Brigade, 1st ID.
okay.
They were in Baghdad with you. Yeah,
So, you were south of Baghdad. I see.
I
what
was
you're saying.
north of Baghdad.
Or north of you. So we were in North Baghdad. You were north of that.
Yeah.
I thought you were saying you were south. Never mind.
We both shared Taji as our home base, but you went south out of Taji. I went
Right.
north.
Yep. Okay.
Yeah. So it was easy back then to get people focused on, you know, living the warrior ethos and being brutal.
Because there were consequences to not doing that,
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
That's what life is about. It's about personal responsibility and consequences. People
Yeah.
only do things if they are required to,
Yeah.
right? And for example, we're talking about labor shortages in America right now.
Yeah.
And Nevada just extended their fucking unemployment benefits until September. Again, they've extended them like 4 times now. People aren't going back to work
Yeah.
because there's no consequence to not working.
Right.
You know what I mean? And if
Yep.
there's no consequence to not being a fucking hard charger, and we need hard chargers, then we're fucked.
Well,
Yeah.
they're incentivized to not work.
Right.
Yeah.
You know, it's like it's ridiculous.
It
Yeah.
is. It is insanely ridiculous, and you see it even in. I mean, if you're seeing it in the 82nd Airborne, then it's everywhere in the Army for sure, right?
Well, it across our joint force. So the Secretary of Defense, in his first message to the force, he talked about China as a pacing challenge.
Which Secretary of Defense? by
Lloyd
the way?
Austin.
Okay.
You know, I have a great respect for. He was my brigade commander back in the 90s in the 82nd. But he didn't talk about anywhere in that letter about fighting and winning. He talked about China as a pacing challenge, deterring Iran and Russia and North Korea, and disrupting terrorist networks, not defeating or destroying, but disrupting terrorist networks.
And I think the words you're using are important, because what you're saying in deterring is we're not going to get rid of the problem, or we're not going to blow them off the face of the earth.
Right.
We're just going to push it along, and so it's not a bigger thing later in the future. Is that what you wish would have happened?
No, what we need to hear, Secretary Mattis, when he came in as the Secretary of Defense, the first thing he said to me in the service senior enlisted was, the word we're using in regards to what we're going to do our enemy is annihilate them. It's not defeat anymore, it's annihilate. And that set conditions at the tactical level. If the Secretary
that's
of Defense,
commander's intent, right?
Exactly.
That's what that is in the military. You get a scope of orders or whatever it happens to be, but the commander's intent is like if the commander says people live here, that doesn't he doesn't need to say anything else. That means don't fucking kill civilians, right? If he says fuck these people, we're going to kill every goddamn one of them because they're ISIS, then you go kill it. He doesn't even have to see that. He goes, hey, everybody that was good is out of the city now. Now we're going in. The Marine Corps in 2006, for example, they just fucking swept through there. That's what it is. It's commander's intent.
Yeah.
Lloyd Austin talking about fucking climate change as being the biggest existential threat to the United States. That's the dumbest fucking shit I've ever heard. Maybe.
Well, I don't agree with that at all. You know, and if we're not talking every day about China being out towards the third island chain in the Pacific, and now they're in Africa, they're in South America. The Belt Road Initiative is alive and well. Russian adventurism is now in northern Africa. They still, are doing bad things in Ukraine and other places.
Right.
And in Iran, the more Iran's economy bolsters, the more their missile force and their ability to be the #1 state sponsor of terrorism is going to grow. And then if we don't continue to deter or shape some things against North Korea, Kim Jong-un's going to get back to his old self, and he's going to start practicing, testing nuclear weapons. He's going to launch intercontinental ballistic missiles. And then obviously ISIS may be nascent now because of COVID, but they are still alive and well, and there are like 10,000 terrorists in the Syria-Iraq region.
Right.
And more importantly, there's 70,000 plus widows of ISIS fighters and children we call the cubs of the caliphate,
right?
Who are the next, the ISIS 2.0. They're going to be taking up arms and suicide.
Well, we did this same shit in Afghanistan back in the 70s and 80s, man. We fucking tore that place apart and left a bunch of 16 to 19-year-olds to become the Taliban. The Mujahideen was not an intrinsically bad
Well, we can thank
organization.
the Russians for that.
For sure.
Yeah.
Well, the Mujahideen was not an intrinsically bad thing until kind of the 90s, right? I guess.
Well, they rose up. The Northern Alliance was created to fight the Russians.
Right.
And if you go to some places, like some of the provinces in the north, you will see burned out Russian vehicles all in the valleys out there.
A little closer to the mic.
Okay. You will see Russian vehicles burned out all over up there,
right,
where the Mujahideen just tore them a new asshole.
Right.
And then as the Taliban came in, it was those guys, the Northern Alliance, that were fighting the Taliban. And the stupidest thing, Mullah Omar could have done, the leader of the Taliban, was let Osama bin Laden in after the 9/11.
Right.
And he lived by this Pashtunwali. He's my friend. I got to take care of him. Well, guess what? We're coming after your ass too.
Right.
So the Taliban wasn't on our list of, hey, we're going to kick the shit out of this guy. We were coming after Osama bin Laden and Al Qaeda.
Right.
The Taliban decided to get involved, and we'll kick your ass too. So. And that's where we've been the last 20 years.
Right. So I guess maybe we haven't really kicked their ass so much as we've kicked our own.
Well, we've kicked their ass, and if you look at how many we've lost and how many
right, but we said the same
terrorists
thing about Vietnam, right?
Well, yeah,
we killed like 3 million people.
Yeah.
We lost 65,000, something like that, or 58. Is it 58 or 65? Somewhere.
58,000 we lost in Vietnam.
Yeah. So I mean, by numbers we won, but did we achieve our goal? Like the purpose of warfare is achieve your goal.
Absolutely.
With the least amount of fucking casualties as possible, right?
Yeah. The foreign policy and the military action have to be synced.
Yeah, and it's when has it been other than World War II?
Well, I think initially in Iraq, it was synced, but the minute the insurgency started,
right, yeah,
it just went to shit after that.
Well, but the civil part of that was, was it Paul Brennan? Brennan, is that his name?
Yeah, L. Paul Brennan.
The calls go up the chain from 101st, from the Marine Corps guys, like, hey, these Iraqi army dudes are coming to turn themselves in. what do we do? Well, we don't have anything for them. Let them go.
Yeah.
That was the decision that has us in Iraq to this day.
Well, and then we eliminated all military leaders. Every one of their generals, we fired them. Their law enforcement, we fired everybody. And then all of a sudden, it made it a permissive environment that
what's poverty?
Terrorists could
People
come
don't
in.
have jobs. Poverty
Yeah.
is the #1 predictor of crime of any kind. And to be frank, terrorism is just another form of crime, right?
Yeah.
It's all it is. We have that going on in our country with pockets of assholes all over the place. But
Yeah.
if you if you give people the opportunity to fucking become shitheads, a good portion of them are going to become shitheads.
Yeah.
That's just how it is.
Yeah.
And we fucked that up beyond belief. I wonder, again, I want to bring this back to modern day.
Yeah.
So regardless of what the politics were back there, we were able to do a lot of shit without a whole lot of experience coming in.
Yeah.
And a lot of the experience and training we did have was for a completely different kind of people and environment.
Yeah.
Now, all of a sudden, we're here, we're getting shit done. Whatever comes next, and let's be real, it's going to be micro wars with China, probably, right? If the Cold War thing overlaps and does its thing again, it's probably going to be micro wars with China and South America and Africa, probably,
Right.
over rare earth minerals, probably, right?
Yeah.
So who the fuck's fighting that war? When somebody gets taught that if you're in a culture class before a deployment and somebody says, well, Chinese people do this and do this and do this, the first person that raises their hand that says that's racist, right?
Yeah.
Now where are we at? Because a fact is a fucking fact.
Yeah. Well, here's what I think. You know, do we have issues in the military that we have to get after? Yes. You know, the sexual assault, sexual harassment, racism, and stuff like that. But we cannot allow that to just consume our attention because our enemies, our adversaries are watching.
Right.
We have to focus and we have to build into our warriors and our leaders that you're here to fight and win. And combat is brutal and unforgiving, and you have to be best prepared physically, mentally, and emotionally for the conditions you could face on the worst day of your life in combat against a numerically superior enemy force.
Right.
And if we're not preparing for that, and we're not building cohesive organizations and building the lethality and readiness and fitness to get after that, then we are going to be vulnerable and very vulnerable.
I mean, ultimately, if this is what we're going to do, if we're going to teach critical race theory and intersectionality, divide everybody, if we're going to tell them that climate change is a more existential threat than bullets and bombs, then we're just going to have to be prepared that these folks aren't going to be able to prosecute warfare properly.
Yeah.
That is the reality of that situation, because you cannot have that belief and fight as hard as you need to fight. You have to be ready to fucking kill people.
Yes. And you have to be able to count on everybody within your organization, regardless of what their race is, their gender, their sexual orientation, or whatever.
Right.
You know? My opinion, I think that is starting to overwhelm our leaders at the tactical level, because not only is it overwhelming, but it's confusing them.
Right.
We do not have a definition of extremism that is understood.
Right.
Same with the police department too, right?
Yeah.
So it's the same thing of like, how many things are you going to implement where it's just sometimes bad people have
But
to
it's
go
also
down.
the same with
and
one of the other things with leadership and confusion is it's the same in corporate America and Hollywood and everywhere else. People in leadership positions are now afraid to say, you know what you're saying is fucking stupid. We're not in the business of managing your feelings at work.
You'll get
today.
sued. They're worried about a lawsuit. They're worried about negative press, and it's carrying over into everything, including war, which it should not absolutely at all. And I mean, that's the one place where you're just like, hey guys, let's call a timeout here. Leave this one alone, and then the rest of your bullshit you can go on about your day.
Yeah.
But also, you know, what you were kind of alluding to earlier is you're not in it right now.
Right.
Whereas you probably went, and as a guest, because we've never met before, Panama. I'm assuming you probably went to Iraq, the
Desert
first one.
Storm,
Yeah,
yes.
right after that.
Yeah.
Then you probably went
Two
back.
times to Iraq,
Yep.
once to Afghanistan. And as the SEAC, during my 4 years, I went to Syria 5 times, 12 times to Iraq, 10 times to Afghanistan, 3 times to Somalia, twice to Yemen, once to Libya. So I went to all the garden spots where we had men and women that were fighting every day.
Yeah.
And so my job was to give the pulse of what was going on in the fighting. In the other critical areas, like in Colombia, where a civil war was just ending between the Colombian Defense Forces and the FARC revolutionary organization, I would go to there, or to the DMZ in Korea, or other critical areas so that I could give the pulse of what was going on to the chairman and the SecDef. That's what I focused on, and I felt that's what I needed to do, so that they, not to circumvent any subordinate chain of command, but to give real-time information that for them that goes directly from me on the ground to them back in the Pentagon.
So with you guys, when you travel around and talk to the kids now, what is your general feeling about this generation that is either preparing for war or hopefully not, versus the one that you guys came up in, which is like Iraq in 07, 08, that area where it was just...
Go ahead, Chachi.
Yeah, you know, I'm a little bit conflicted because you have to look at the natural evolution of war and what it means now. We don't fight wars the same way we did in Vietnam and World War II, so we probably have to adjust our processes and our mindset as we approach those certain things. All of our people are mic'd up now. Everybody knows what's going on, so that's huge. But at the same time, this younger generation of Americans, and again, there are still phenomenal Americans who are signing up to serve, right? The 1%, and so I give them all credit where credit is due. They're more of a me generation, a me focus, but yet they're still serving. So there's got to be some conversation that has to happen, but it can't just be lopsided. It can't be leadership forcing the conversation with them because that's awkward. It's making them feel okay to speak up or have a voice, which is a little bit contrarian to historical military perspective on what we do to seek input from the lower ranks. So it's this weird teeter-totter that we really have to get back on to force some of those talks. It's not about having the talks, it's making them feel safe, right? To have the talks, but
boy.
Right?
Even just saying having them feel safe, I mean, that right there is what the fucking problem is.
It is, but then there's this weird dichotomy of different things to where, you know, there's warriors, and I was having the joke the other day with SEAC is, you know, and forgive like the horrible analogy, right? But if you've got that 300-pound cyber dude who's out of shape, virgin, living in his grandmother's basement, but he can hack China, I'm happy to call him warrior. You know, like, I'm happy to, if he's the best, I want him on my team. I don't care what uniform he wears. Happy to have him on the team. So it's a new form of warriors. We have to allow for that too, right?
Yeah.
So it's the whole safe thing. So you have to be willing to have both sides of that conversation.
Yeah, but what I'm not prepared to have is a conversation that involves his feelings. Fuck that guy, right? If your feelings aren't, we're gonna win this goddamn war because our social values are better than theirs. And if you don't believe at this point in life that our social values are better than China's, where they routinely execute people, where there are 1,200 to 1,400 active concentration camps, get the fuck out, because you don't deserve to fucking breathe this free air, frankly.
And I'm 100% with you, other than there's no other way to say it. So many people are brainwashed.
Yeah.
You know, like, and I can't, I don't want to hold them accountable. They don't choose to be brainwashed. But if that's all the information that they're being fed, I really have to work with it, and I have to be a little bit patient. That's what SEAC and I were talking about is, you know, trying to have that patience to let them see what reality looks like and the practical application of warfare in a three-dimensional battle space, space and cyberspace.
So if you don't mind.
Are you guys on the payroll for doing this now?
Well, I have my own consulting company. I work for 9 different organizations, and when I do go to speak and get asked to speak, my sponsors will pay for what I'm doing. I don't charge the military for me to come and talk.
Oh, gotcha.
Yeah.
Okay. And that's why I was asking, because I didn't know if the military reached out to you guys and said, hey, you guys have seen some shit. Now, these guys are a bunch of pussies, and we need you to come in and tell them what it could be like or what to expect.
So here's, you know, and Chachi and I were having this conversation. I think we get invited in because we're retired and we don't have to have a filter now.
Right.
Now, I don't have any authority either, so they can throw my ass out if they don't like what I say, but they keep inviting me back because the message I'm continuing to send is one that everybody understands. And that's that you're here for one reason, to be ready to fight and win anytime, anywhere, and under any circumstances to defend our freedom and our homeland and our way of life. And nothing can cloud that. And when you focus like that, 38 years of experience, when you focus like that, it will transcend race, it will transcend gender, it will transcend sexual orientation, because you are all coming together for a common goal to kick the shit out of the enemy that is in front of us, and that you are doing it for the United States of America and our partners and allies, but you're doing it for our country, and you're doing it to defend the freedom that our citizens deserve. And that is what we ought to be pounding every day. Do we got to get after some of this other stuff? Yeah, but I will tell you, in 20 years as a command sergeant major, very few times did I have to have a discussion about people's feelings and wants. When you're a leader in the military that leads through your example, and you're present where the troops are, and you're sharing in the hardships that they have, or the combat they have to fight in, and you're persistent in having a balance between discipline and compassion, and chewing ass when you need to, and hugging them when you need to, and then you're performing as a leader. You want to know what right looks like, troop? Follow me, and I'll tell you. Iron Mike's statue is probably the best example of what a leader should be. Got the rifle in the hand saying, follow me. And when you do that as a leader, I don't care who you have in your formation, you're going to build a cohesive organization that will fight and win because you are in a band of excellence to get after the critical skills necessary to kick the shit out of the enemy, even if you have to use your entrenching tools.
So when the top-ranked person in the entire U.S. Department of Defense, Lloyd Austin, says that things like COVID and the climate are our biggest challenges.
Well, I think COVID will absolutely prevent us from doing the collective training necessary to build that.
Well, not COVID, the fear of COVID, right?
Well, yeah,
that's not the same thing.
No, you're
because
right.
Because the 22-year-olds in the 82nd Airborne have about a 0.00006% chance of even noticing they have the goddamn thing, right?
Hey, I will tell you, I treated COVID like an insurgent, okay? I was not going to allow this terror that I couldn't see to stop me from leaving my gated community and go to the grocery store. But I was a disciplined troop. I got to wear a mask to get on a plane, I'll wear it. Did I believe in the mask? Absolutely not. And then to make things easier for me and my family, because COVID came through our household, my wife and I got vaccinated, And it's not that, I am succumbing to a conspiracy theory that, the government is trying to put something in my body with a needle that will allow them to indoctrinate me. I just know this. I don't have to wear a mask wherever I go in Texas now because I'm vaccinated. And if that allows me to be able to go and drink a beer with Chachi or come over and hang out with you guys like this, then I'll do it. But the point is, back to your point, Dan, the Secretary of Defense is responsible for sending a message to the force about who we are and what we are and why we do what we do.
Right.
And if it does not start, and this is Troxell's opinion, being a retiree, if it doesn't start with, we are going to build the most lethal, ready, fit military in the world that can fight and win under any circumstances and will allow us and our freedom to go on in our homeland and way of life to be safe. If we aren't starting off with that, then I think we're going down a road we shouldn't go down.
For sure. I don't think it's any surprise based on how the social change in this country since 2016. That we've gone from General Mattis to this turd that's in there now. I know you respect him, but I don't.
Yeah, and that's fair.
I'm glad I retired.
And I wanted to ask you guys about that because does it matter more who the president is or the Secretary of Defense? Because you guys have seen all of it at this point.
I think that they have to be in sync because the commander-in-chief creates the national security strategy and the priorities for what the military ought to do. And I will tell you that when, like him or not like him, when President Trump was in office and we had John Kelly, retired Marine 4-star, as the chief of staff at the White House, and we had Lieutenant General McMaster as the national security advisor, and then we had the Secretary of Defense was Jim Mattis, and the chairman was Joe Dunford. I thought that was the absolute perfect team to be where they were at. And we did some things in the cyber domain. We did some things to ISIS. We dropped 59 Tomahawk missiles. When President Trump saw those kids getting hit by barrel bombs that had chemicals in them and everything, we dropped 59 Tomahawk missiles in Syria, just like that, to get after it. We focused NATO on raising their GDP to defense to what we were doing, and that built a stronger alliance and was a deterrent to Russia. We continue to put pressure on China that was hampering their ability to get after this Belt Road Initiative. I just think if the President and the Secretary of Defense have to be in sync and they have to do the hard stuff that will tell people, don't come after us. If you want a shot at the title, it will go bad for you, okay? Because if we don't demonstrate that we have the ability to defeat someone, we damn sure ain't going to deter them. And when we have this period of great power competition, where across the elements of national power, with economics and diplomacy and information, if the big M military can't say, you know, if you do something, we're going to kick the shit out of you, then we're not going to deter China or Russia or anybody else from going out and doing their malign activity.
No, you can make the argument that it is morally irresponsible not to show the strength that you have, right? Because you're inviting conflict at that point.
That's fair. That's absolutely
and
fair.
by showing your strength, I'm not talking about attacking other people. That's not what it's about. But when your fucking recruitment ad, your big Super Bowl recruitment ad for the Army is about intersectionality, then you're fucked. Like that's the end of that shit right there. When China is talking about combat, and Russia's talking about making their kids more, China was actually talking about making their kids more manly,
Yep.
right?
Yeah.
And we're attacking masculinity, right? I mean, we're not going to win that fight if it happens. Well, they're not going to win it. It's more like I was talking to Jared about this last night.
Yeah.
Because he was just telling me about some of your stuff. These kids that are there now aren't going to be able to fight this war, in my opinion. On the ground, I don't think they can. Because how do you transition? Look, you saw it in Vietnam quite a bit. Those people, especially the draftees, were not ready to deal with that shit. Mentally, they weren't ready to deal with it. They weren't standing out in the field yelling what makes the green grass grow, right?
Yeah,
And people think that's silly and shit, but it's not. It's
Well,
worked for thousands of years.
Yeah. Brother, I'll have to push back a little bit.
Okay.
I am confident that we will have trained and ready forces. What I'm not confident about is the mental and emotional focus that we will have, that, you know, major combat is what we got to focus on.
Right.
Because we are focusing on other things, or we are prioritizing other things other than the ability to fight and win over what our core job is.
Right, but like you're saying, that starts at the top. I can't, if I say follow me and I'm Iron Mike, but where I'm leading you to is a place where our feelings matter more than prosecuting the war, then that certainly permeates the fighting force. I mean, it really does. When there's bad morale, you're not going to win shit.
Right.
Ever.
Absolutely.
Like, I don't care how superior your force is, you're going to fucking lose.
Yeah.
Right.
No, that's fair, and I agree with you. That cannot be what we lead off with. You know, to build a cohesive force, it's got to be a lot of things: training, education, experiences, and stuff, and everything, and, you know, cohesion within the organization, which means that diversity and inclusion and equity are some things you got to think about. But it should not be the focus.
No,
and we
certainly
should not treat people with kid gloves just because we're afraid that there might be a complaint coming our way.
No, we're dealing with the wrong thing when we do that. Now, it's your point about the 300-pound neckbeard dum-dum that's hacking China. Look, the idea about the military has for thousands of years been in-shape men prosecute wars, right? But warfare has changed now.
You bet.
So if I need that guy, I shouldn't be talking about that particular part of it anymore. But the idea that the 82nd is going to call people working up at Creech Air Force Base a bunch of fat dummies, it's going to happen, man.
Yeah,
you just
you
got to
bet.
live with that. That's how fucking life works. So they're focused on their feelings. And it would be very stupid of our country to narrow the pool of people we select from to a group that is smaller than the group capable of doing that job. So if it includes fat people, then it includes fat people, right? I don't give a shit if people at Creech Air Force Base are doing PT or not. What I care about is when I get on my radio, they drop bombs where I point my fucking laser.
Yeah.
That's what I care about.
You know, and that's one of the things that SEAC and I were having a conversation about. One of the things that I attribute directly to him was the removal of the bullshit tattoo policy.
Oh,
Yeah.
yeah.
Because
that
like
was
you
so
could like it was
stupid.
and so
Everybody
it's-
has tattoos.
Everybody has tattoos,
Everybody, yeah.
right? And it's not a measure like, you know, the military standards that
The
we
beard's
have.
next, right? Like, what does that have to do with anything?
Exactly.
Jesus Christ.
So you know, coming out of World War II, this 1950s Americana, we adopted the standard that was prevalent at the time. We all I don't want to wear a fucking hat every day. Like why? That is not a measure of my airmanship or soldiership or any of that stuff. Like we need to adjust and evolve. And so SEAC, I think, was leading the charge in helping show we need to get rid of some of these bullshit policies because, and again, you shouldn't question the standards.
Right.
But at the same time, if the standards are bullshit, call the standards bullshit and reevaluate and move forward.
Right.
Plus, just looks-wise, fear. If you see a guy with a beard who's all tatted up running towards you, or a guy with a side pony just kind of jogging along, dude, you're gonna run away from the guy who looks like he just got back from the insurrection. Like that's what you want, right?
Well, we did it. We did it in World War II. The paratroopers shaved mohawks into their heads. Not the officers, but the vast majority of paratroopers gave themselves mohawks. We did that too. So we got called up on DRF1. It was we had a couple of days. We had like 72 hours and then we deployed, but it was we got called up. The first thing a lot of our dudes, especially our NCOs, did was go out and get Mohawks because this was a big fucking deal, right? It was like a huge troop movement, maybe one of the largest troop movements in a small amount of time in a very long time. Anyways. And when we got to Taji, our leadership, which included Lamarcus Knowles, you probably heard him. He's the biggest piece of shit human being I've ever met in my life. Walked around and told everybody because he was afraid of what it might look like to other people that you shouldn't do that. Now, I remember sitting on an OP one day, not too far, maybe 600,000 meters away from Sadr City. We're sitting there, and this dude walks out into his little courtyard there, as you know, exists in fucking every Iraqi house. And he fucking draws an AA on the wall and looks up at us, and we're like, and he fucking grabbed his kids and took them inside. That is an important fucking psychological factor in warfare. I need that to be able to do my goddamn job. And I can't if my fucking nails are freshly manicured and my face is clean shaven. I need to look like a fucking psychopath, right? They have to believe that I'm capable of doing anything.
You know, one of the things, the comments I hear all the time from leaders nowadays is, you know, they'll take pictures of them, selfies with them and their troops and put them on Facebook and stuff, and they'll say, hey, and somebody will say, hey, we're glad you're taking care of the troops and everything, and they'll respond, hey, I'm just trying to be a leader for change. Well, what the fuck are you trying to change? Okay,
from what into what?
Yes.
That's what I want to hear.
What are you trying to change to what? If you're just saying, and to me, when someone says something like that, then they fall right into that category of being woke, you know?
Right.
And so, you know, I served for 1 month shy of 38 years, and if I was trying to be a leader of change, it was because we either had a new technology or a new capability that we need to get in. You know, if one thing has transcended all the wars we fought is that Joe is going to be Joe. Joe's going to do the same dumb shit, you know. He's going to be painting other guys' ball sacks with edge dressing, or they're going to have Class Bs in the barracks.
Or right before an inspection, you're going to get your eyebrows shaved off, and then fucking general walks by, is like, asshole. So, and everybody looks like a dick, but it is what it is, right?
So they're going to do that, but with engaged leadership that leads through their example, I don't care who they are, we can turn them into some lethal, ready warriors. That
the biggest garrison turds I knew were the best combat guys, for sure.
Well,
there's no question about that.
Absolutely. And we were talking about that. Chachi and I were talking about
like
that
Jared Taylor, for example. Total piece of shit and his ASOS. Always getting in trouble, fucking doing weird shit, trolling the fuck out of people for no reason all the time. But when it came time to fight, he was good at
Well, I tell you that article he wrote a couple years ago about hazing and how hazing made him a better warrior. I absolutely stand by that. How do you build a warrior class and not let people do warrior shit? Like, you can't sit around and play your games, you know, video games, albeit awesome, right? And think that that's a replication of you being able to, you know, put violence on the enemy and just, you know, slow roll, quarter time pace, you know, while walking through all your different stuff. I mean, I think his article was spot on.
I agree with that, and I think it's important to call things what they are. The guy at Creech Air Force Base doesn't need to be hazed. He is a technician. Like I wouldn't haze a computer programmer. That doesn't have anything to do with his job. But stripping you down to your base element and showing you that the lowest you can possibly go, we can still win, right?
And then Code Red, we had this conversation, you know, about a Few Good Men where Jack Nichols said that is a vital part of close infantry training. Absolutely spot on. You want your team to hold you accountable, because if you're going to fuck up in training, you need to make sure you're not going to replicate that in combat.
Every dude in the military watching that scene is like, fuck Tom Cruise. Like, I agree with every goddamn thing he said. Are you kidding me? Like, sometimes he's right. It is unfortunate that the kid died. That sucks. And maybe they took it too far. But what was it that, God, I have to look this quote up. You can't
handle the truth.
Well, no, I don't need to look that
You can't
one up.
rise and sleep under the blanket of protection which I provide.
That's
and
a good
question
one
the
too,
manner which I provide. Right? I like, because you need people to have that blanket, and it's a violent blanket.
It certainly is. Yeah, I mean, it's, man, it's like the equivalent of this, to me, in my opinion at least, is somebody walking into a building and saying that the support beams for that building are too aggressive or too large or whatever. Are you fucking kidding me?
Yeah.
Shut the fuck up. and stand under there. Don't have the building collapse on you like it just happened in fucking Miami, right?
Right.
Because what I want as a person is not to have to constantly worry about outside threats. That is what human civilization has always been all about. The entire fucking point of us coming into the same location is to build a fence around that bitch, point spears outwards, and make sure nobody else comes and takes our shit up into including our lives. That's it. All of human civilization is that. Yeah. And somehow we reduce it down to a list of fucking personality traits or physical characteristics. Shut the fuck up, man.
It's only going to continue. It's not going to get better, in my opinion. As we go on throughout every aspect of our life, growing up, because I've got 2 young kids now, it's like when you're asking what's they or them is, or what all the pronouns are, what they should be saying, what they shouldn't be saying. As I get that question from my 7-year-old all the time about what do you say about this person? What do you call them? And it's like that never used to be a thing,
Yeah, I think you're right. I had a conversation with a guy that has totally different views of the world than I do, and he's like 35 years younger than me. And he just asked me what I stood for, and I said, I believe in strong family values. I believe in a strong work ethic. I respect for authority and law enforcement, and I love my country. And he said, well, you're a classic fascist. And I'm like
here's what I'll do.
Dude, I will start at the floor and kick your ass all the way to the fucking ceiling.
Here's
my
what
point in all of this is...
Drinkin' Bros will pay to fly you, whomever you are out there, to an actually fascist country whenever you want.
Yeah.
We'll pay for the flight. And
we'll send you to North Korea,
And, let me know how that works out for you, motherfucker.
So my point in all of this, Ross, is that, we got some stuff we got to get after, but don't criticize people because they have good Christian values, okay? Because I'm not going to criticize my next door neighbor who might be a Muslim or anybody like that. If they're a good person and they treat me with respect, I'm going to treat them with respect, then we'll get along, Right. But I don't need to go out of my way to prove that I'm not a racist or something like that. I've been married to a minority for 37, almost 38 years. I've lived in a Mexican family. My kids are biracial, half Mexican and half white. I don't need to prove to anybody that or change in any way to show that I'm not a racist and definitely not an extremist. I will show it every day through my leadership example, what I expect out of the men and women when I was in uniform. And that's what allowed me to serve for 38 years and serve where I was at. And now, like I said, my wife's family are minorities, and the vast majority of my friends are minorities. Because we never sat around and had touchy-feely points and said, we were doing activities because we were like-minded individuals, like doing PT and drinking and karaoke and dancing and shotgun and moonshine and stuff.
People take some stuff the wrong way. I mean, if you come into, particularly an 82nd fucking infantry unit, but if you come into any infantry unit at all, or I would say 20 years ago, probably any military unit, anywhere. You could show up and be all the things that you're supposed to be. You could be perfect to whomever, and they're still going to light you the fuck up. It doesn't matter who you are, what you did, or what you've done. Everybody's a fucking high school quarterback. Shut up, bitch.
Yeah.
Like, you're nobody. See those fucking, you don't even have stripes on your shirt yet. Shut the fuck up.
Well,
that's who you are.
In this hypersensitive world now, where people can find an insult in a bouquet of roses and they see toxic people under their bed at night, it's even worse.
It's silly. I mean, look at sports and how people talk shit to each other, right?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
And I don't understand why it's considered intrinsically bad to shit talk. I thought that was actually, it's the most entertaining. If you look at every successful brand athlete, it's because they were talking shit. Michael Jordan's jawing at people, shooting free throws with his eyes closed. Yeah. You know what I mean? Come on, man.
There's a guy in the chat right now, Life is a Laugh. He said, I served with Troxell, and I can tell you, he isn't a fascist. So, there you go. Congratulations.
All right, brother. Sweet. Free beer. The rest from here on out, my beer in your glass, brother.
He paid that guy. Hey, we got some little bit of time left before we get out of here.
Well, we get a ton. I've got nowhere to be. Yeah, well, I want to know what E-Tool Nation is.
Yeah. So, one of the things that I think is inherent in any leader that you do that are in the military, you do two things. Well, obviously, you prepare men and women to fight and win in combat. But your leadership style has to be that you inspire the troops, to want to reach their untapped potential and grow and develop and everything. And you do that through your example and being a leader that, you know, provides purpose, motivation, and direction and everything. And you intimidate the enemy. You know, I will tell you, the more ready and fit we look, the more rolling down, you know, in Solder City, looking for a gunfight, chances are you won't run into the gunfight because the enemy's like, I'm not going after those motherfuckers, you know. But if you go kind of passive into Solder City, chances are you're going to get hit by a freaking steamroller.
Yeah, you don't play prevent defense in warfare.
Yeah, absolutely.
Like, that's fucking stupid.
So anyways, when I became the SEAC and General Dunford, you know, being, you know, nicknamed Fighting Joe Dunford, 5th Marines, the invasion of Iraq and everything, and always been known as he's an elder statesman, a phenomenal leader, but he's always been a warrior and focused. In his role as the chairman, he focused entirely on making sure that he was giving best military advice to the Secretary of Defense and President on how to use the force. And then when Secretary Mattis came in and he said, we're going to annihilate the enemy, and Secretary Mattis and I were on a stage together, and he was talking about annihilating. There's a bunch of Marine Lance Corporals in the front row, and he's talking in words this long, and they're kind of looking at me like the enlisted guy, like, can you explain what the fuck he's saying? Yeah. And so I said, you know, that's when Surrender or Die started. I said, hey, that means we're going to, you know, keep, you know, dropping bombs on the enemy with great JTACs like Chachi and shoot them in the face or beat them to death with our entrenching tools. And it never went anywhere. It was just me inspiring the troops until I was in Bagram, Afghanistan on Christmas Day, and Dunford and I were up on stage, and Medal of Honor recipient Flo Groberg is with us. It's a USO tour.
Flo's been on the show before. Great guy.
Yeah, great guy. So Flo and I had entrenching tools in our hands. And I got up there and I fired up the audience and told them we're going to beat them to death with E-tools. Well, there was a Washington Post reporter in the audience. You know, this little short, balding, fat guy with, you know, crew-serve cameras around his freaking shoulders and everything. And he comes up to me and he says, you know, you just, you know, are telling troops to go out and commit war crimes. I said, the fuck I am. We teach battlefield airmen, soldiers, and Marines how to use non-lethal, you know this, non-lethal means to neutralize threats and kill the enemy. And he said, well, I'm going public with this. And I said, knock yourself out. And then when I walked away, I thought, oh, shit, he's a far-left reporter. So I called up my public affairs guy. I got to give him a shout-out. He is the public affairs guy for VFW, Master Sergeant retired Rob Couture. He has a podcast. Go to VFW and check him out. But I called up Rob, who was back home on Christmas at Fort Meade, opening presents with his kids, and I said, hey, this asshole just told me he's going public with Surrender or Die. And he said, let's beat him to the punch. He said, have the chairman's photographer send me a photo of you holding an E-tool. I'll do the quote that you always use, and we'll put it on all social media platforms. And when that happened, it went viral. And the troops loved it. I was getting messages from Somalia, from Special Forces Group commanders saying, thank you. I was getting messages from photographers that worked for the president and the vice president that I knew that were saying, they love it over here. It's the message that needs to be sent. But the Pentagon, there were some people that took offense to it. And across the United States and in Congress, there were some folks that took offense to it. And so this went down a road of where Washington, D.C. and the Pentagon was not as comfortable as a place for me to work. And it ended up with me getting a complaint against me for, you know, hostile and toxic work environment, torturous language and stuff like that. And
that's and I was, if they have to create a new phrase for what you did, then you didn't do anything. Well, just for everybody out there, if you get accused of something and it's an accusation you've never heard of before, you're like, what the fuck does that mean? You didn't do shit wrong.
So I was suspended for 6 months, and I was in a closet, and I had a TV, and I had a computer. I read 27 books, and I watched every episode of every season of Moonshiners. So Ross, if you need some, you know, cherry bounce or something, or Dan, you know, you need some cinnamon spice or something, I can hook you up with some good moonshine. But I wasn't going to tap out. People were telling me, retire, you got 37 years. And I said, fuck no, I ain't going out like this. And I stayed the course. Now, did I make mistakes? Yeah. And at that level, when the IG is investigating you, they are turning over every rock, looking to see if you've done anything wrong for years, you know. And in the end, there was some minor stuff they found, some bullshit. And the chairman brought me in, the chairman counseled me, and he said, now get back to work. So I left his office, and I kind of did the Conor McGregor walk back to my office. And I went about being the same leader I was, but this E-Tool Nation thing had taken off, and people started sending me entrenching tools to sign, and it inspired the force in a way that the force needed to be inspired. And even though I went through shit, and because I said this, and then it ended up going down to other things, professional jealousy and stuff that caused me to get in trouble, I was not going to back away from that. Because guess what? I would have looked like a punk bitch myself by saying, oh, shit, they're putting heat on me, so I'm going to apologize. And at no time did Secretary Mattis or General Dunford ever come to me and say, you need to walk this back.
Well, I mean, Mattis isn't going to come talk to somebody.
He told me to keep saying
it.
He said it fits his narrative of annihilate, you know?
So who is it? I mean, if he's the SecDef at the time, why didn't he walk down to the Pentagon and tell him to shut the fuck up?
Well, because there was a process. Somebody filed a complaint against me.
I see.
And
you've got to go through all this paperwork and bureaucracy and everything else.
It's actually funnier that way when it goes through the whole process and he's like, I don't care.
Yeah.
Do you ever have visions of yourself with an e-tool against that reporter from the Washington Post?
I wouldn't need the e-tool. That dude.
Was it Brian Stelter?
Yeah. No.
He's only 35 years old, by the way. I didn't know that until last week.
Yeah.
He looks like he's fucking 70.
No, I could have danced around that dude and he would have gassed in 30 seconds, and then it would have been the GNP, baby, ground and pound on his ass.
What's the fucking point? Like, looking back at it, like hearing this.
Well, it's pushing a narrative. Well,
yeah, but for him, like, what's the fucking point?
Well, his initial point was that, I'm an enlisted guy that is kind of speaking out on policy, on how we should do business. And one person, even told me, hey, enlisted people are meant to be seen and not heard. And then even then, I was like, hey.
Pretty sure the SEAC is not meant to be seen and not heard.
I was like, hey, we can all be some fighting motherfuckers in here tonight if I get another freaking comment like that on me. And so to me, this was something to showcase the power of an enlisted leader, that I could say something about our most dreaded, insidious enemy, and it would inspire people around the globe. To the point that, the German news networks, French news networks, ISIS started talking smack about me on their French propaganda page. So what did my PAO guy do? He said, let's talk smack back to him. I had 57 death threats against me, across social media or in other manners. So I had to have a little bit more security for a little bit, you know. But in the end, it was all just what an enlisted leader does. You inspire your troops so that they can fight and win under the harshest conditions and intimidate the enemy. And, I talk all the time about a leader having the attitude in the military that you can load this whole outfit on my back. I will carry it to the objective, employ it, and fight and win, and talk shit after. The attitude. I'm not saying that the leader is going out by himself.
Right, of course. Yeah.
Obviously, he's got to have his team with him. And even then, some of the people, a little left to center took offense to that when I said something like that. But my point in all of it is and Dan, you keep talking about World War II. Think of some of the leaders back then. Think of the 325. Hey, buddy,
glider,
you're looking for a place to hide? Just
Yeah.
come behind me because I'm the 82nd Airborne Division, and this is as far as the bastards are going.
Every 82nd guy knows that fucking story.
Absolutely.
I think it was
PFC Martin, 325th Glider Infantry.
Was it? By the way, the glider guys, they weren't airborne. Well, they were airborne qualified, but they didn't jump under a parachute. They rode a fucking wooden plane into the ground.
Yeah.
Fucking
with
lunatics.
a kind of canvas floor, and so when the plane got ready to land, they had to raise their knees to their chest.
Yeah.
So in case a tree stump came through or
Right.
something.
And this guy was. They were coming to rip a unit that was being They were under attack by tanks.
Yeah.
And he jumped down into a foxhole. The guy's like, "Hey, we gotta get out of here. There's tanks." He goes, "If you're looking for a place to hide, it's back behind me."
Yeah.
Because I'm the 82nd Airborne Division. This is as far as the bastards are going. So that's how E-Tool Nation started off.
And Chachi, how did you guys get linked up together?
So we had a mutual friend. I was serving in the Air Force in some of the senior enlisted levels of the Air Force, working under SEAC as far as that goes. So I've always had a mutual respect and admiration for the job that he did and the tone that he set for all of us because of E-Tool Nation, which, by the way, I think a little bit to Dan's point, that should have been just a small blip on the radar. Everyone should have heard that and be like, okay, cool, he's on board, right? But the fact that it was so profound, I think goes back to the main point of, like, holy shit, that is not the culture of killing and winning that we have here. And so we got linked up through a mutual friend, Dave, and just spent the last few days with JT, just kind of collaborating and just waxing philosophic on leadership and the practical application of leadership and hopefully the evolution of leadership in a military context for our next wars.
Well, with you personally, because you were 25 years?
Yes.
Who was the best leader that you had during your time in service?
Man, I really had so many, and for multiple different reasons, like for different character traits or the ways that they spoke to me or their education levels and things of that nature. And so, entirely too many to count from, because it just, the people that were most impactful weren't trying to impact me. They were being authentic. They were being genuine. And then me, I was just, along for the ride as far as leadership, and I was part of their troops. And so I really appreciated how they handled that, from a Ranger TAC P, Paul Ford, right, to now the 4-star United States Air Force's Europe, General Harigian, Cobra Harigian. Like, he was just a good dude. And because everyone's talking about innovation. And I was saying in one of his meetings, he's like, guys, I don't give a shit about innovation. I want you to solve problems. If that's innovative, so be it, right? Guys, just solve problems.
Yeah, that problem with change for its own sake.
Right.
Like, what the fuck, dude? If it works, why are you trying to fix a problem that doesn't exist?
Yeah, and General Hurigan was so great. He was the Combined Forces Air Component Commander in the AOR, and just absolutely phenomenal to successfully articulate a point without belaboring anything, but getting you on board with his vision and then moving forward in a practical way that everybody could understand and get behind. Like, I really appreciated that.
Now, earlier he mentioned when it was the most cohesive was Mattis and Trump together and those guys.
Well, I wouldn't say. I would say that right then and there, the guys under Trump, from Kelly and McMaster at the White House and Mattis and Dunford at the Pentagon, I thought was the best team to take our country where we needed to and provide for the security of our nation.
So where I'm going with this was, who was the worst team? Because you guys have been in for so long. You've seen it all. Who was it?
Yeah, well,
Can you give an honest answer?
Well, no? There's so many that I've seen. So I will tell you, and I'll be frank about this. A leader at all levels, you shouldn't change who you are and what you are. And you should be authentic and genuine, as Chachi talked about, and not try to push a narrative. And so I spent 20 years as a command sergeant major, and I didn't change my leadership style from when I was a battalion sergeant major till I was the SEAC. Except as a senior most guy in the DOD, my kind of, hard charging, be physically, mentally, and emotionally hard, kill the enemy and all that stuff. All of a sudden now, people were like, hey, And I will tell you, there are some folks in the Pentagon, especially some senior officers, that are there solely focused to get their next star. I'm not telling, there's some great generals out there, and I served with a bunch of them. Guys like Dunford, guys like Scaparrotti, and guys like that. But
Scaparrotti was the 82nd Division commander for
absolutely,
a while, from like 2004 to 7 or something like that, or 4 to 6 maybe.
Yeah, and he was in Regional Command East with the division. I worked for him in 3 different jobs over the course of 4 years. A phenomenal leader who hadn't forgotten where he came from. And so I just think...
why would you, though? I mean, think about it from another sports analogy.
Yeah.
Teams that fucking have a lot of success in the regular season and then all of a sudden change it up for the playoffs because they outsmart themselves and they fucking lose, right?
Yeah.
Do what got you here.
Absolutely.
Like, if you rose to this level of authority, it is because what you do works.
Yeah.
That is the essence of a meritocracy. So why the fuck would you change it at that point? That doesn't make any sense.
I'm with you.
And the expectation from the organization or whomever that you should change to fit some new fucking position, no, that's stupid.
Yeah.
Like, yeah, you change the way that you do certain things, but the attitude behind it can't ever change. You speak differently to a bunch of Congress people than you will to Joe.
Right.
For sure.
Right.
But the message is the same. If
Absolutely.
a congressperson says, hey, what are we doing here? Like, we're going to go kill these motherfuckers. You might say instead, we're going to go do everything we can to annihilate this enemy.
Absolutely.
Instead of kill the motherfucker, but the message is the same, right?
Yeah.
And like Mattis had all the phenomenal quotes from growing up.
You could tell he spent a lot of time developing those too, which is smart of him because, look, he knew at some point, if you're an officer, you know at some point you become a politician, even if you stay in the military.
Yeah.
To some degree, you become a politician.
But it's also a great recruiting tool. If you have these catchphrases and things to go off of, great. That's what makes people want to join. When we had Tim Kennedy on the show, I asked him the question because he posts a lot on social media.
Yep.
And people give him shit for it. Who are just like, man, this is too dangerous or risky or whatever. He's like, look, I'm trying to get people to go in.
Yes.
Like, you want to show them the cool shit.
Yeah.
So they'll want to go in and do the cool shit. Like,
right.
What's the problem with that?
Yeah.
But
I mean, a lot of the SEALs that exist because of Charlie Sheen. Let's be real, right? You can say whatever the fuck you want to.
Rob O'Neill, dude. Like,
Rob
you want the cool stories.
Rob O'Neill exists because of Charlie Sheen.
That's true. That's true. He said that. Yeah.
And he's not the only one. There's a bunch of SF dudes that exist because of John Wayne or because of fucking Rambo or whatever the fuck, right?
Yeah.
This is the way it is.
It is.
You know, and Ross, a little bit to your point, I'll answer like as far as the presidential things. I joined under Clinton and then Bush, Obama, and then I retired under Trump. And so from my perspective, I will say that the military, by and large, funding, pay raises, whatever, fares better under a Republican presidency than not.
Gotcha.
And again, I don't want to make it political, right? But those, if you go back and look, those are historical facts.
No, not at all. I mean, look, if you're looking back at it just from like a media perspective or whatever, most people would probably think you would say Bush, right?
Yeah.
Because who knows why we went to fucking Iraq in the first place, or back to Iraq, I should say, in the first place. And I was curious if you guys had felt the same way. Dan, I've asked Dan about this a million times on our show, and he's got a very clear and defined answer of whether or not we should have been there or not. I wondered if you guys did, having all of this hindsight at this point, 38 and 25 years respectively.
Yeah, I think we could have handled things differently. I think we had to go into Afghanistan because we needed to get bin Laden because he bloodied our nose. Bottom line, 9/11, we got our nose bloodied. And
that's what he's saying there is that if you allow that to happen, right? If you let the world know you're that guy to steal on, then everybody's coming.
Yeah.
And it's not like we're one amongst many. We are the lone superpower on this earth. We already have a target on our back.
Check.
If you start allowing people to go unchecked when they come, there's a reason enforcers exist in hockey. Right?
Yeah.
It's to fucking knock people the fuck out.
Yeah.
It's simple. So I don't know if anybody could have.
So I thought going into Iraq at the same time was a little weird and unusual, and I don't know if it was the right time to do it. Things went well for the invasion, but the minute we got into Baghdad and everything and the insurgency started cranking up, then we knew we had a new fight on our hands. And now we're not talking about months to finish the effort. Now we're talking about years. And think of this. When we went into Afghanistan, 12% of the population was literate. The Taliban was controlling every function of the government. And when we came in, along with the Northern Alliance, and started changing things, now you look now, every one of those young privates that join the Afghan military leave with a high school education of some sort, or an elementary school education of some sort. And when I was there as the CSM of all combat forces in 2011 and 12, I would talk to some of these Afghan privates, and they would say, before the Americans came here, I was an animal because I couldn't read or write. And now I can see what's going on in the world. I can read what's going on in the world. I can write now and everything. And now I'm fighting for my country. But, getting us into a conflict like Iraq because of the assumption that Saddam Hussein had weapons of mass destruction, in my opinion, that was a mistake. But once we got into it, as we all know, well, we're going to kick the shit out of whoever we need to do, and we're going to get the mission done, whatever that means. And
the problem with that is that we never had any kind of clearly defined mission at any point. Even during the surge, the mission was to bring the violence down a little bit, but there was never. With a war, there's got to be an end state, right? With everything we do in the military, there's task, condition, standard. This is the task. Here are the conditions. This is the standard. This is the end state that I expect when this is done.
That, like I said, the foreign policy has to guide that. And in some cases, and I will tell you, you mentioned the SEALs. I spent a lot of my time as the SEAC going to places where our elite special operators were. The guys behind the fence at Bragg, the guys down in Virginia and everything. And when I would get on the ground, the first question they would ask me, what's foreign policy here? How does this end? Kind of stuff.
Yeah, of course.
And I'm like, well, I was hoping you could fucking tell me, dude, because, but the point in all of that is.
Well, people want to know, people that are fighting a war especially want to know when the fuck it's going to end.
Yeah.
If you've ever been on a long run, You don't want to. There's a reason that that group across the fence in Fort Bragg doesn't tell you how long the long walk is.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
It's to test your mettle to see
Absolutely.
what you're made of. But the vast majority of people, including those guys, by the way, want to know. All right, just tell me what winning looks like, and I'll go make that shit happen right now.
Yeah.
I'll do whatever you got to do to make that win happen. But if it's nothing, right? If it's amorphous, like what do you do?
Yeah. Now, I will tell you, in defense of what is going on now, in order to keep us out of these wars where the foreign policy doesn't match the tactical action on the ground or the operational action on the ground, I think now this era of competition where we look to build competitive advantages in things like cyberspace and nuclear over China and Russia and the others, and we continue to build the ability for our partners and allies, along with us, to respond to crisis, whatever that may be, is good. But in the end, when it comes to conflict, the answer has to be we're going to fight and win, period.
Right. I mean, I think Mr. Miyagi said that, right?
He did.
Yes.
He did. Very, very brave man.
Yeah.
Do
Very
not
brave
fight, but if do fight, win, I believe is what he said.
Yeah.
You guys are, Jesus Christ, I could talk to you guys for 5 hours. I know you got shit to do here. Now's the point in the show we get to the Drinkin' Bro of the Week, which is someone who has inspired you or helped you become the person you are today. Chachi, we'll start with you. Who would you like to give the Drinkin' Bro of the Week to?
Man, gosh, so many people to think of. But, as far as people who inspire me, one of my best friends, Senior Master Sergeant retired Dave Bickle, another friend of JT's. We happened to be deployed in the same area. He got blown up. A friend had called, and I got to go over there. And so through his struggles there, he was the first person in the Air Force, first enlisted person to get like a fighter weapons school patch, right? So trendsetter there, doing all kinds of great things. So Dave, if you see this, you're out there, man, I love you, brother.
That's awesome. How about you?
Mine has to be Command Sergeant Major retired Roger Blackwood. Roger was, when I was an E5 and I reported the 82nd, he was our master gunner. He taught me how to be lethal with an armored reconnaissance vehicle and fire the 152 main gun and the coax and all that other stuff. And then later on, I was a platoon sergeant when he was a first sergeant in the 82nd, and he just personified inspiring the troops and intimidating the enemy. And then when I was in the surge in Iraq, when we were there, he was the 1st Armored Division Command Sergeant Major. But more importantly, he was the 2nd Cavalry Regiment Command Sergeant Major during the invasion, and he got hit by probably 7 or 8 IEDs. He got 2 Purple Hearts, and never once did he say, hey, I'm going to leave. And on a jump at Bragg, he jumped in and he broke his ankle, and he refused to leave the unit. And he just personified everything that our military should be, and that is, lethal, ready, fit, and ready to get after it on a moment's notice. So, Roger, if you're out there, thank you, brother. I love you, and make sure the beer's cold and Bragg when I come for All-American Week.
That's awesome. And tell everybody where they can find eTool Nation and help support.
Yeah, so I'm on all social media platforms. We have an eTool Nation page on Facebook. I'm getting ready to start an eTool Nation podcast here in August. That'll be coming up. And if they want any kind of eTool Nation apparel, you can go to pmehardconsulting.com and order on there. And again, I'm on all social media platforms, and I look forward to engaging with the audience out there.
Under John Troxell?
Yes.
Okay, great.
Now you got to watch the fake ones on Facebook and Instagram. Tim Kennedy is, he's
always posting.
Yeah, he's always posting about this shit, and
well, everybody wants to be Tim.
Oh, I thought you were going to say that. I thought you were going to say that Tim was pretending to be
John.
No. There's probably 100,000 fake Tim Kennedys, and there might be 100 fake John Wayne Troxell. So, but yeah, that's how they can get a hold of me. Get your eTool Nation shirt. We got the special edition with the SEAC rank on. Somebody reached out to me and told me I was doing copyright infringement. So I had to go research to get the information that I already knew the answer to, and that the military does not copyright military ranks. That's why these T-shirt companies have military ranks.
Well, some of these shitty apparel companies sell it's just a regular shirt with actually sewn, like legit sewn on military ranks. So shut the fuck up.
Yeah. So, go to eTool Nation. Stay tuned. We're going to continue to inspire. And if need be, we'll get back in the fight, and we'll kick the shit out of the enemy, too.
Perfect. And then I can't let you leave without asking why they call you Chachi.
Yeah, so it's a
So
whole
was there
long-
a Joni? Did you used to look like Scott Baio? What was it?
Yeah, so my wife gets Joni all the damn time, and so long story short, that both these gentlemen will appreciate was Dollar Beer Night at the Palomino there at Bragg.
Oh, yes.
You know, one thing led to another. My last name is Pachesa, and so one of the guys, this guy Chaz Bocook, that I knew everybody there except Chaz, and so he was telling me to go get him some beer. He's like, "Hey, Chachi, why don't you go get me a beer?" And all the dudes started laughing, and there it was. That was back in '99.
All right, I'm just making sure it's
Very
not for like
underwhelming,
sexual
like, very
prowess.
underwhelming.
Yeah.
Yeah, like no
'Cause Scott
R.
Baio was-
Kelly type of stuff.
Okay,
or,
Scott Baio was shagging ass back in the day. I didn't know if that was
He
you.
was, and then he was Bob Blah Blah.
Yeah,
on,
Bob Blah
Oh, yeah,
Blah,
yeah.
Arrested
He
Development,
also
yeah.
wore his jeans pulled up to his tits, so I don't know if that was kind of what you were doing. too.
Z Cavaricis. That was the style back then, dude. That was the style. Gentlemen, we appreciate it. Go to eTool Nation and find out all of the things they're doing for this great country of ours. For Dan Hollaway, I'm Ross Patterson. This is the Drinkin' Bros podcast. Good night, everyone.